Hey guys, GhazzyTV here, coming in with a sit-down podcast with LSR. Thank you so much, LSR, for joining in. For those of you who don't know what this podcast is, a quick rundown is that it is basically me calling up a friend of mine, and this time it is LSR joining us, and we're just going to choose to talk about a specific topic, and the topic is the game we're talking about. And today, that game will be Path of Exile. No other questions, no topics, nothing. We'll just see where the conversation goes. And I know LSR is very big within crafting, and I love that aspect myself, so I'm pretty sure we're going to be nibbling on that topic today. But LSR, welcome in, man, and thanks so much for joining. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, man.
It's a genuine pleasure. What have you been up to lately? We talked about it just before the show, but you give us a recap again. That'd be nice.
I usually, when I stream, I don't usually craft that much because I don't know. Whenever I craft, I get to like a point where there's no point for me to map because I just make too much money just staying the hideout. So I just try to stay away from crafting as much as possible when I'm like streaming. So basically, I've been just grinding, and I've been doing at the start of the league. I've been mostly doing expedition because you can do it like with the league start, and it's really easy, and it's really good currency per hour as well. And I farmed like my headhunter and plus like about 100x on my explosive arrow. Just do expedition the first few days, and after that, I transitioned into a bow build, omniscience. And basically, I've been farming legions because legion scarabs have so much value. They're like 1C right now, or
Really?
less than 1 chaos. Yeah, legion scarabs are like 3 rusted for 1C,
Jesus.
and like legion with breaches and beyond RBs, ambush, and essences. I was cropping every essence and the league mechanic as well. So every map, I was getting out the map with like 70 to 100 kills probably. I was spending like 10C per map, and I was just running them super fast. And I farmed that until probably like 1.5 meters probably.
Really?
And then I just mirrored the bow. I put on some good gear. I made a video on how to craft the basic new gear with the new currencies. I crafted my whole gear with that. Yeah, I mirrored the bow. I had a lot of damage at that point, so I just went into pre-art content, which is delirium mirrors, and they are crazy. Delirium mirrors delirium mirrors with beyond triple
Mhm.
beyond. You can get 300 stacks of simus, 300 splinters every single map. I was doing strand when simu prices were really high. Now they went down, so you switch from focusing more on the actual juice of the map and just the raw amount of mobs to more like divination card farming. So you farm maps like you can farm port if you want. You can farm burial chambers. You can farm promenade. That's what I'm farming right now. There's other few maps that you can farm, but you generally just want a really long map and you want a good divination card. So those are the good maps. And the cost per map is pretty high. You probably spend around like 100 kills, but
Mhm.
out of them you get around 3x per map out, like 2 to 3x per map out.
Mhm.
So I'm being able to farm like 100 to 150x per day easily. I make a mirror every 3 days on average, and I've been just instead of just crafting my own gear, because it's really hard to get like the perfect bases. Like for example, I need double implicit synthesize ring on my build, percent strength
Mhm.
and frenzy. They don't exist. They just chew on the whole market. So I've just been mirroring every piece of gear. I mirrored my chest from Cloudy, my bow from the triple arrow bow, and mirroring the rings now.
Is that Path of Mass
Um,
bow, or which bow was that?
no, okay. There's a bit of debate about what's best between flat elemental and flat fizz.
Oh.
I'm of the idea that flat fizz is always better because you can get Herald of Purity, which is a more multiplier
Uh-huh.
before the conversion, and
Ah.
then you can get hatred scaling, and then you get aura effect. Hatred gives you fizz as extra cold, right?
Mhm.
And then it gets multiplied by the more of hatred again. So if you're really high end on the build, I think fizz always beats elemental. But elemental bows on low budget are very easy to craft. So, and with Secrets of Suffering, you can seize really high damage for pre-low budget, right? So if you want a lot of damage early, you can go for elemental bow. It's fine. But I think super high end or for general mapping, because Headhunter gives you so many gain as extra buffs. I think that Fizz always beats elemental in maps in general. But for like really early budget, like to seize a lot of damage fast, I think flat elemental's fine.
That's fair. That's fair. I didn't actually think about that. I'm not personally a big fan of bow builds, as you might know. I prefer spellcaster builds, mainly minions, but mostly
Yep.
spellcaster builds, like Dark Pact. I love that, for example. So I actually didn't think about that, but I can see the reasoning behind the arguments presented. I know. I also feel like at the end of the day, when it comes to the mirror service version, like if you take the build that I'm playing the mirror tier of my Meixsell build. I reached 240 million shaper DPS, and I decided to cut that in half just to stack up my defenses. And the difference, like my helmet is level 16 min damage, whereas the competition has a level 20 min damage, for example, and they're charging 70x more per fee for the mirror of it. But the thing is, the actual shaper DPS difference between the two is 2.2%. So it's like you'll never notice. You can't see that damage difference. At that point, it kind of doesn't really matter. So, I mean, if you're comparing the LE bow versus the bow with Fizz, I don't personally, I haven't played it, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't sound to me like it would be anything that you will ever be able to notice which one would perform the better. But I can see the argument of you getting headhunter buffs with stacking a lot of Fizzes extra would definitely, at least logically, make the Fizz one better. But again, I mean, you won't see the difference because you're still going to one-shot pretty much everything you run into, right?
Yeah, the thing is, most elemental bow builds are going for Sixes of Suffering, which makes you not able to freeze, shock, and ignite. And the freeze and shock are really strong while you're mapping. And also, if you run Sixes of Suffering, it makes your crit really inconsistent in avoid element maps. So in general, if you go standard no Sixes of Suffering build on a Fizz bow, I think is like the best setup possible for mapping. But if you're doing bosses, I think flat LA is great.
Well, I mean, taking the bill aside and looking at we mentioned earlier with making money with profit crafting and whatnot, that's a really interesting topic because I've been doing similar things with my stream lately as well. Before I move on, I know that some people that are gonna watch this on YouTube will be like, "What the fuck is he having on his face?" I just want to point out that the white beard here is part of a sub goal that we achieved. That's why it's colored white. Just want to have that pointed out. So moving on, I kind of agree with this whole idea with profit crafting on stream. I do it very rarely, and I only try to show people the more budget-friendly approaches that most people can achieve, right? The problem with doing it on stream, from what I've seen, is that as soon as I show a craft on stream saying, "Hey, this is profitable," 2 hours later, that entire market is either flooded or destroyed. So I try to avoid it to some degree and rather make videos showing people how to craft the item and not emphasize too much on it being a profitable craft. And then you have the other aspect, like there's a lot of people that don't find it enjoyable to sit in your hideout. And I've had the same problem where you're sitting in your hideout and suddenly you're making several hundred exalteds and be like, "Yo, I'll just keep doing this. It is so fucking effective." But only a select few people would enjoy that. So I also try to avoid it on stream. So like the first 2 weeks of League launch, I streamed between 16 and 24 hours per stream session. And before I went to bed, I spent another 4 to 8 hours a week profit crafting off stream. Then I went to sleep, slept 4 to 5, 6 hours, and then get back on it. And I try to do that consistently. So that's how I made my wealth when it comes to crafting the mirror items that I made for this league so far. But I definitely agree with it being... There's a lot of aspects as a content creator to take into consideration when it comes to profit crafting. And then we have the other aspect of creating a situation where you are generating passive currency through investments that everyone can do, such as you were talking about investing about 100 chaos per map. As long as your bill is able to handle it and keep up with the delirium fog, you could then dish out 2, 3, maybe more exaltas if you get lucky, but you're always going to get that 2, maybe 2.5 exaltas every map as a guaranteed revenue for that investment, which is basically how you make currency. The more currency you have, the more currency you'll make. And that goes not just for profit crafting, it also goes for investing into map running. Last week, I've been focusing on that as well, but on the very low end version where I'm showing people just a generic Atlas setup like Delirium, Beyond, and then smacking Alva, where the underlying farm strategy is having a chance of getting a Deli Mirror, but you're going to have Beyond in there, and without even using Scarabs, and you have strong boxes in Harvey, of course. all you have to do is alch and go. You cannot lose money doing that. You will get more than a chaos out of that map. So all you're going to do is you're going to make that strategy to build up more currency. Then with that currency, you can start investing into, Scarab, for example. In that strategy, I've been using Ambush and Harvey Scarabs, which doesn't make the map too hard for a super low budget or a new player to go in and farm to make currency, right? So they can always make sure that they make money out of it. And then you can add other types of farm strategies. In this case, I've been lately focusing on Alva to show the corrupting rooms and Dorianis Institute to get that extra bump of currency out of it, right? And then once they have that to generate an income, then they can move into the things that you're talking about that you've been doing, where suddenly you're going to start investing 100 chaos per map, but you're going to make way more back. It's all just taking steps up the ladder. Have you made any type of content that is focusing on the very beginning approach for newer players in terms of investing into maps for profit?
I did it last league, but yeah, this league I haven't really done a lot of videos. But last league I did it on Expedition, and just using one scarab, I can go maps. I was making 4x an hour, and you can do that this league as well. You can even just do logbooks. I have a guy in my chat that does over 100x per day just doing logbooks. It's pretty crazy. You can split them, and you blast them first. You split them, and then you just run them efficiently, and you just talk to all the NPCs. So you do Gwennen, Tujen, Dannig, and Rog. Rog is so underrated. You can make so much money with Rog, especially crafting like Fizz Claws, Elemental Claws, Fizz Bows, Elemental Bows. Now everyone's playing Omniscience builds, so those sell for a lot. You can try to make spell suppression gear, which people are spamming with essences, right? But with Rog, if you get like the increased tier, there's not many tiers of spell suppression. You can easily get like highest tier of spell suppression on Rog. If you start with like spell suppression on it, you can see the item is like half crafted. You can pick it up and just finish it, and then use the new currency. Maybe if it doesn't have good prefixes, you can finish it with you can finish the prefixes with a new currency. And yeah, I think Expedition is one of the best monies, and any build can do it. You can do it like I was doing it on day 2 on my Explosive Herbalista character on like 2x investment. And yeah, I think that for like a starter, on low currency, Expedition is like the best for me at least. I've been playing a lot with Grim and Tuna. We hang out in Discord when we play, and what Grimmer usually does is you just get a lot of cheap scarabs in your map, and you just scale the mechanic of those scarabs. For example, Metamorph is extremely cheap, and the Metamorph at the end of the map can drop a lot of catalysts, and there were like 4 or 5 chaos. So if you pay less than a chaos on a Metamorph, it's like pure profit. The same for Legion. I like Legion. I did Legion for like a week. Before I went into Dali. There's so many like extremely cheap scarab that give insane amount of value with the new Atlas.
Yeah, I feel like the new Atlas makes it so that you're kind of in a position where you have to actually try not to make currency when you're running a map. Like you deliberately have to have the goal not to make money. I kind of like it. At first, in the first week, I felt like maybe GGG are showering us with a little bit too much. But at the same time, I think that also speaks from a perspective of someone like us that plays an obnoxiously unhealthy amount of hours, and that it's it gets overkill. But if you take a look at the other side of the coin, with someone who plays the quite opposite, a healthy amount of hours, a couple hours here and there, maybe not even every day, those people will benefit so much from having this shower of loot being available to them. Suddenly people are more inclined to use the scarabs rather than to always see them as, hey, I dropped a scarab, let's sell it because I need the chaos. Now they're actually more inclined to actually utilize them and interact with the content and have more fun that way, and still not lose currency doing it. But what's your take on the Atlas so far, now that we played it for a few weeks?
I really like the new Atlas. There is like one small problem that I have, is that pretty much if you're trying to juice the maps as much as possible, there is pretty much only one tree. You have to take all of the effect nodes at the top. You have to take like the triangle of effect. Let me open my Atlas. Okay. You have to take the triangle of effect on the top, because it's like basically, like the old Wattstones that give you effect. those were the best possible. That was the best possible Waston. It scales everything in your map, so it scales the difficulty and also it scales pack size, quantity, and rarity. That's just the best possible map mod. And you also need to go for Eater of Worlds and the pack size nodes on the right and on the left, right?
Yeah.
And you have to go for Beyond. Like those are like guaranteed. You have to take them. And then Alva is 3 Alvas per map. That alone, and also you can make the mobs inside all blue, right? This has to make them magic. So you have to take that as well. And there's only like around 10-15 points that you can balance around. You can go with Abyss. You can choose to go for Ritual, or you can go for Blight at the like the last points to increase the pack size. And there's not much that you can do. Like in a very, very high-end game, me and Tuna have been trying like to do a lot of strategies, but at the end we just end up with the same tree that you can't really change that much because some points are just too good.
I mean, that's always going to be the problem, right? And you mentioned Eater Worlds, which is one of the problems I have with the tree, with how insanely good, I don't remember the node name, but the one that was 50% more altars, that node alone completely makes it unnecessary and a waste to even think about going searing.
Yeah.
So the only nodes you want for the searing is the two side nodes in the triangle, right? You don't even want the notable, just for the pack size, right? Because there's no reason to go searing when you're gonna get tons more altars, which spawns more monsters and gives you better effects from it. Like there's no comparison. And to me, it was kind of weird why they didn't just do a copy pasta on those two, because they're basically just the opposites of one another. Why make one significantly better than the other? It just felt weird to me. I mean, we have the aspect of, for example, the Shaper Elder at the very top in the middle. I don't remember which one is left or right, but one side gives you an additional percentage for the boss to drop the Shaper map. The other one gives you 1% extra for Elder, and the one in the middle, or at the very top, gives you 2% for both. I mean, that's literally a copy pasta. They're similar, they're the exact same. It's just one for Elder, one for Shaper, and you get what you get. Whereas the Eater, Worlds, and Searing on the opposite side of the entire trees are in just completely different nodes all of a sudden. It's like, it didn't make much sense to me. Granted, this is their first draft of it, so it's going to be fun to see how they plan to balance this in 3.18. Is there any other nodes on the tree that you feel have this aspect where it's not really worth bothering?
No. Okay. There's something else that is really good, but basically, Martial Forces, it gives you pack size on Conqueror maps. So the only other option you have, other than Eater of Worlds, you can go for Conqueror maps. But that requires so much trading. You have to buy every single map with a Conqueror on it, and then you can juice it even more than with Eater of Worlds. It becomes like crazy pack size maps, because the one node alone, it gives you 20% pack size, right? And then you take all the effect nodes, and the only way to make even better maps than Eater of Worlds is to just trade an insane amount. And I don't think it's worth it to do it solo. Like, if you like doing that much trade and downtime in between maps, you can do it. But if you just want to map fast and just buy your Sextant in bulk and just map all day and just grind, it's not really an option. And about bad nodes, I don't think there's really bad nodes. Like, depending on what you like to run, there's a lot of good things. If you like run Bestiary, you can run Bestiary. There's so many nodes. You can run Tains. Like, yeah, you can pretty much run whatever you want. And so most nodes have a purpose. For example, at the start of the league, you need to take the nodes with Kirak and stuff at the middle of the Atlas, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then you drop them later on. So, like, even if they're not good, like that good at, like, as long as they're good at one point of the league, I think it's nice to have them in the tree.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea where there's different perspectives, right? And I think that the way the Atlas is designed is very nice, because you get a sense of progression similar to how you're speccing your character. Maybe you want to go CI. Going into an energy shield based build, this is one of the best examples of comparing the Atlas tree with your character progression, because you don't start with CI, right? You start with a life base or a hybrid. And then when you are ready, then you make some minor changes to the tree to accommodate to the build you're supposed to be playing. And the Atlas tree have a similar approach to it, where you're kind of shoved into this corner where you should pick up, the shaping nodes on the tree. You want to get the Kirak missions. They help you get the completion bonuses. They can even pop the Dorian's Machinarium and stuff like that. That is just absolutely disgusting. get the unique maps, avoiding trading. You can do everything. You can do the install self on a self-sustain this. So they want to shove you into that corner. But once you get to the point where it's like, well, I lack one map, I can buy it. Now it's time to look into a better strategy with this. I am self-sustaining my maps. I got my void stones eventually. Now it's time to adjust that tree to the farming strategy that I want to. And the other aspect is obviously that since it's pretty much anything you do is always going to make sure that you're going to make currency, unless you're really trying not to. And that allows you to farm whatever you enjoy as well, which we can't forget. It's a game. And even if you don't like farming like the hardest and the most profitable way, then find something that you enjoy doing and settle with that. I went with Corrupted Gaze pretty much for 2 weeks straight because I like the idea with the 5 or 6 modifiers, gas jewels mainly. Pro tip, it didn't work. It was terrible. It was dog shit. But I enjoyed it. So, I mean, that matters, right? But then again, just like you, most of my currency is made from profit crafting. And because of that, I didn't really care how effective my mapping was. I'd rather just make sure I had fun with it. And it's any strategy you're running. You talked about the Conqueror maps, for example. Most of my farming strategies I've been running, I made sure to include the Conquerors, Eater, and the Shaper Elder Guardians, just to drop them. So whenever I decided to do something with them, I could run a mapping strategy with them because I never sold. Well, I sold them in the start, of course, but now I stacked up, 50, 60, maybe 100 of these maps. So now I can, without needing to buy all of these maps, I can then actually do a strategy with them and avoid that nuisance of feeding the need to trade. But I mean, I kind of like the tree in general. I think it's good for the casual players, but how would you rate it in the current tree compared to previous? Because you've been doing a lot of meta grinds in the past as well, like the big dig farms, right? So how would you compare the current state of farming for casuals and for endgame players compared to what we had in the past?
I think that they raised the floor a lot. It's way easier to get started mapping and make money mapping, but the ceiling is a little nerf, I feel like. But it requires way less trading than other leagues. Last league, you would have to, like, for example, last league I played in a group with Tuna for like 3 or 4 days, and we were trying to min-max the maps as much as possible. It would take us like half an hour to run a map because the server couldn't even catch up because there was too much loot on the ground. We're doing the full setup, like full magic find color with a carry doing damage and full supports and everything, maximum quantity and rarity. And you have to buy all of the Watchstones, right? You used to have to buy all the Watchstones. And then there were Maven Watchstones, they only drop from Maven. They were extremely strong if you get the perfect setup. You could get like 4 mods, like that are like double the value of a normal blue rolled Watchstone. So you would have to go for every map 4 unique Watchstones. And that is so much trading. And then you have to sextant them. And you have to match the sextants. And now you don't have to do all of that anymore. You can just buy sextants in bulk. You don't have to match the sextants. That was the worst possible thing. Like, you had to buy the Watchstone, and then you had to roll its sextant by yourself. And you couldn't like buy a Watchstone with the mod already on top of it because it was like 3x Watchstones each. So you actually had to self-roll. You had to have a person with the block ready to just roll the work that went into it was so much. Now it requires way less work. And it's I think it's just better, even though you can't achieve the level of quantity and rarity and pack size and everything that you could other leagues. It's still pretty high and it's still really good, but it's way less trading than other leagues for sure. Just the dropping the Watchstones and the annoyance of the Watchstone is huge, and the bulk of trading sextant is also amazing.
No, I have to agree with you there as well, because I've always profit crafted and then I just ran whatever I liked, which was mostly in-game bosses, and I just repeated that process over and over again, and I like doing that. But now, because of the removal of a lot of the nuisance that is required, and that is gatekeeping or gate-kept people from those super in-game farms, I feel more inclined that, hey, I can actually do these in-game farms now because I can actually be arsed to buy the few scarabs I might need. Like, I'm okay with that, and that's made me enjoy mapping more than I've ever done. I've mapped more in this league than I did during the entirety of 316, for example, which is crazy. And we've only had this league for what, a month now? So it's absolutely crazy. I love it. But how would you say that it compares to the entry level, say not the ones that are following a meta strategy, but for the people that are super casual, like the guys that only play like an hour, 2 hours a day, do you think that the approach they have now is better or worse for those people?
I think it's way better because you can take, for example, there's some strategies that you just take all of the map nodes that chance to map drop to be duplicated, and the one that increases the chance of dropping a map next to the one you're running, and you can just run white maps, for example, city square, and you just run to the middle and you just kill the boss and you make profit multiple x an hour. You can literally just pick up every possible map node, that run to the middle, get the conqueror, shaper, stuff like that, and then duplication, and you can just drop so many. Even if you're doing SSF, you can pretty much just respecting your tree. You can just self-sustain everything that you want. You can do like a boss rush strategy to drop like invitations for searing exarch and eater of worlds. You can drop conqueror maps. You can drop shaper guardians. You can drop elder guardians. You can drop anything like. And if you don't want to, like, you can just respec out of them. Like, you can run whatever you want. I think the new tree is amazing. It's really, really good.
No, I actually really like that strategy. It's a bit of work, takes some time, but the best thing about it is that you need half the completion on the map to get that started. So you don't really need much at all. I'm actually quite interested to see how that would work in the next league because of how popular these specific maps are for completion bonuses. The items that drops from them, like hell, even at searing is profitable in the first couple of days. Well, first day or two, right? So even when things like that is profitable, I think that next league I might just try getting all the map nodes, the eater worlds, obviously, why not, and picking up the conquerors and elder and shaper guardian maps, and then literally just spam the maps white, just rush the boss and just repeat that process over and over and over again. And just selling those maps. I remember the Conquer maps were like 30 chaos in the early stage, right? If not more. And they're still, to this day, like 20, 25 chaos a pop. And that's just the Conquer maps. If you drop the Elder Shaper, I think they're about 10 chaos. I mean, that's money. And if you then just clear the map a little bit before you get to the boss, you're going to drop it with all the map nodes. You're going to drop one or two or more with the actual map you're running. And anything else you drop in between, even in a white map. It's such an effective way to make decent currency, and like you said, running it white means that you don't need a build that can handle anything but clearing the campaign. Smack a tab and a Ross on it. You can do that on tier 16 maps, no problems.
Yeah, and also they added a lot of okay, so for example, last league we had to choose our map that we liked, and it needed to be in the right zone. Now we can just pick our atlas and then shape it for that map. Like, we can completely change our atlas just to run that map efficiently. For example, with the new altars, you can either clear the full map and pick all the altars on the way and then get a lot of loot from the boss, or you can rush the boss, take all of those mods from the pool of the altars, right? And then you scale the map itself. So for example, city square or cemetery, usually what you do is you either clear the full map and kill the boss, or you kill the boss and then clear the full map after, because removing all the boss mods makes it so that you get way more often, for example, like the 3% chance of scarabs, which is pretty insane from the mobs, like the 3% chance of dropping scarabs.
Oh yeah.
So most of the times, if the map allows it and it's like the boss is like near the entrance, I just rush the boss and then clear the full map. It's usually way more money.
Oh yeah, for sure. You get up the chance when every time you get the boss choice gets changed and you have the probability of getting something else. I've actually tried doing that for some time. It was really effective, but I've realized that it kind of depends on the speed of your build. Now I'm playing a mage skeleton build, and because I'm picky with not removing Malvern's warpath, I kind of limited on movement speed even with a mage blood. So because of the lack of movement speed, I decided not to bother that. But that was because I was running cemetery and eventually I got bored. So I'm running port maps, and there's no way in hell I'm running to the other side of port and then clearing it back. So I just stopped doing it. But it is effective, especially if you're playing a build that is very fast and moving, or running a map like you mentioned that has the possibility of getting fast to the boss and just kill that. Make sure you get the best rewards possible out of that, basically. But no, I definitely agree with the sentiment of the way that the tree works and how it feels. What would you say is the best ways to improve the Atlas in its current state? I gotta change the battery headset there. I'll be back in a second. But what do you think is the best way to improve the Atlas in its current state?
I think that okay, the best nodes that we can possibly get on the Atlas, I think, are like stuff like pack size, and concentrating that all in like very specific nodes like Conqueror and Influence, like Eater of Words, Influence, and Conquerors. I don't know. It feels kind of weird. It feels like I think they should spread the pack size a little bit somewhere else, or like the effect. You're kind of forced into really specific nodes. Maybe make I don't know. I actually don't know. It feels really good already. I would just maybe either keep it like this or spread some pack size somewhere else, because like pack size is like one of the best mods with effect. Like usually, really end game, you're trying to get as much pack size and quantity as possible,
Yeah.
and you just try to magic find the maps.
Do you think
And
that
that's what most people are moving towards. You're just trying to stack pack size, get really good maps with a lot of quantity and pack size, and then you multiply that by the quantity in your gear. Usually on bow builds, you drop like the rings and maybe the boots and the gloves, so that you don't like really drop a lot of damage and you can steal MF, and you just drop like so many uniques. I dropped a headhunter, even though I'm running corrupted sextant, so every like most items that I drop are corrupted, and I still dropped a headhunter. Like it's not bricked. Like I probably bricked multiple ones by now, but the amount of money that I make from divines offsets the bricks that I do, like all the belts and stuff that I brick, because you can make like 400 divines a day or something with the sextant. It's kind of crazy.
yeah.
But yeah, even with that, like you drop so many uniques that you can drop sometimes, like Maze Blood and Headhunters and stuff like that. I even dropped a mirror this league.
Oh shit. I still haven't
Yeah,
dropped a
it's
mirror
actually my
yet.
first one. I never dropped it before.
How many hours have you played the game again?
A lot. Last time I checked my hours, I was like 8,000 or something years ago, and it was on Steam.
Oh
And
shit.
then now I'm playing on the standalone client, and I probably played more than that.
Yeah. I did a quick check on the amount of hours I played the game, and last I checked was just about 27,000, and I've never
Oh
dropped
my
a mirror.
god. Oh my, 27,000. Yeah, I
Never
probably play
dropped
like
one.
15, at least 15 to 20,000, I would say. But that's a lot of hours.
Yeah, me and the guy I usually play with, one of my moderators, Tibaka Kaka, between the two of us, we have over 50,000 hours. He has more hours than me, and we have over 50,000
God.
hours played in the game, and none of us have seen a mirror drop. And then we see people dropping several, or the ones that are getting double from a box
Yeah.
and shit. It's insane. But I mean, I kind of like the idea with the way, or well, I'm not sure if I like the idea, but I think it's important for people that don't run these strategies to hear from LSR and myself talking about like what are the best ways to achieve these big dick farm strategies, the very high end. And it's like LSR was saying, we're focusing on pack size and just the mod effects from the on the maps, right? And that gatekeeps or that locks or limits the variations you can do on the Atlas tree. So I guess, I'm not sure, I haven't really thought about it, but an idea struck my mind earlier, so I want to hear your thoughts on it. And that is, what would you say if they entirely removed map effect from the tree? Would you say that would allow us to have more variations for these high-end games? Or would you say that would just be straight up bad?
If they removed it completely and maybe put in the maps themselves and put more power into rolling maps, because now the meta is literally just spam for beyond, like you scour Alk until you get beyond, right? On the map. And then you go to the bestiary and you do the crab plus cobra combo and you just slam it to 6 mods. And then either you put the Dali mirror or the Dali orb, and that's pretty much it. 6 mod rare. You don't really want to corrupt it because it can brick and lose the beyond. But yeah, dropping the effect maybe and having more, I don't know, emphasis on just actually rolling the maps for high quantity and pack size, because some mods don't really give the same amount of quantity and pack size as others. If you go on Craft of Exile, they have different values. So for example, you can get a 6 mod map with like 28, and you can get one with like 33, 34, I think. It's like, so there's like some really strong mod. Maybe put like effect on the as a roll on the map themselves, maybe, but that would increase the cost of rolling.
Yeah, I guess. We also have to take into consideration that this specific topic basically only affects...
It's only super high end.
Yeah, it's only super high end. It only affects a very select few, the 1% player base, and not even all of the high end players, because not all of the high end players does that. A lot of us, we play, you know, we do profit crafting and we do other things, right? But there is still a large portion of players that does this. But then again, I guess the other question we need to discuss would be, how valuable is the effect of map mods for the non-high-end players? Do you think that they have a significant impact for the more casual players? Because my personal opinion on that topic would be that they don't really care, and they don't really roll the maps that high, which means that they will be worth less, because the less massive the map is, the less value you get from these nodes.
The thing is, with the new Atlas, we get so many like flat amount of just, okay, for example, you get a free shrine on the Atlas for like just taking points, right? You can make really good maps just alken going. Just from like picking the nodes. Like you can get a free shrine, you can get free boxes, you can get free RBs, you can get like a lot of just like essences. There's a lot of things that you can just get for free pretty much. And so even like a low end, it's really linear. Like getting 1 point per map is like, it feels like really linear progression, and it feels really good progressing compared to other leagues where you have to do all the Wattstone leapfrog strategy. So basically, I feel like this league is so much better. Like the progression is just very linear and straightforward, and it's pretty good. I like it.
No, I like it as well.
Even for low end, you get a lot of free things, like even at the start of the Atlas, and it's kind of like you can pick whatever you like running.
I think that's the best part of it. Like, obviously, no matter what changes they make, they're going to be in a position where the high-end players, you know, they'll always find a way to optimize it. And as soon as you optimize and min-max that approach, it's going to be limited, because it's going to be the point where you have to get that, you have to get this, you have to do those, because these are undisputed the best nodes you have to go for this type of farm. And then the remaining points are the ones that creates the variations, which is in the current state, like you talked about 10 points or something, which is very, very limited. But that's only for the min-max approach, right? And if you look at the way the Atlas looks right now, and view it from the perspective of the newer players, it's suddenly in a position where, like you said, it's like they get to choose whatever they want. It's more about creating an entertaining sequence for them to play at. And, you know, obviously a lot of people would find it very fun to make a ton of currency, right, per map. That's always fun. But you also have to keep in mind that that is kind of, you know, gated behind having a build that can handle it. Not every build can do in a Delirium Fog from start to finish with, you know, triple beyond in there. That's going to be very, very, very hard for someone to manage with a low budget character. And I think that with the approach to just being able to choose what you want to run, and like we said before in the start as well, we're able to be in a position where you can't lose money to win it. I don't know. I think it's really good. I think my biggest problem with the Atlas that I would like to see improvements on would be variations for the high end, which essentially I think the best way to do it would be to completely remove the effect of map mods. Because if they remove those, that would actually allow that high end to have more variation, because there's suddenly fewer travel nodes that are mandatory. And I think that for the lower end, I think they've done a really good job, because you can't lose money. I don't think there's much you can lose there. And then the biggest problem for me would be the way searing exarch is right now in comparison to either worlds, because of that one node. They could just copy pasta that, and that problem would be fixed, right? How big of an impact would that be for the high-end farming? Because I haven't seen that tree, as I haven't bothered doing it. Would that be an impact if you were able to run searing exarch instead? I guess it doesn't change much, since you're still connecting.
No, it's exactly the same. You're taking the whole triangle on the top. All the effect, you have to take it. It's just too strong.
Yes, you're still connecting there.
You're connecting both ways. And you also need to take the pack size. On the left and right side, the pack size for influence monsters, right? Because when you spawn altars, it spawns the influence monster with the altar, right? And you take the 5 small pack size nodes, and you can, those are global. So you take 4 on the left and 4 on the right. So you're basically taking the searing exarch 4 nodes as well, skipping the big notable. You're taking just the small ones.
Yeah, because you're connecting around, right?
Yeah. Just as I was saying before, pack size and quantity is just too strong. You have to take it. and effect scales that packs and quantity, so you have to take that as well.
Mm. Oh, that's
But yeah,
fair.
I think that like to sum it up, pretty much for like low end is just too good. Like compared to other leagues, it's just way more straightforward and easy. And that's what me, Grim, and Tuna were asking for, like other leagues. Just more accessible content and being able to run the content that you want over and over without having to be forced into other content. For example, let's say you were mapping last league, you were forced to do Cyrus at some point. Let's say your build was like a fast mapper, you couldn't kill Cyrus, maybe, let's say. You were like either forced to sell it and stop your farm, or forced to like log in another character and maybe kill it, or like respec a few points to make your character viable to do Cyrus. Like, yeah, if your character wasn't like min max to do Cyrus as well, you were like stopping to do other content that you wouldn't otherwise want to do, and that felt bad. So this Atlas, like, perfect. You just do whatever you want to do, and you don't. They made every boss pretty much into a fragment,
Yeah.
which is perfect. I think you're not forced to do anything. You can skip the mechanics that you don't want to do, and yeah, I think there's it's gonna be really hard to make a tree better than this one, to be honest, or like optimize it more.
Mm. Oh, that's
I think
fair.
it's really good.
Something that we should mention, because we did talk about the idea of running eaters better than the searing, right? Well, that's kind of fundamental. But we also talked about this whole idea with running white maps with the map boss drops the different special bosses like Conqueror, Elders, Shapers, right? And that progresses the invitations for Eater Wars as well if you're running that. But if you're running that strategy, you're not really farming it to clear the entire map. So you're not going for the rituals. So with that kind of strategy, it might be better to farm the Searing Exarch because fewer people are running that, and the actual Forbidden Jewels that drops from Searing is actually worth more. But most importantly, the Eldritch currency from the Embers instead of the Ichors is actually worth about twice as much. I think the grants are 2 chaos each, whilst the grants for Eater Worlds is only worth 1 chaos each, if not less, like 0.9 or something. So there's some incentive to do the ineffective one when you're not running it in the effective way, right? So I think that could be fair to bring to light as well for the people that wants to run that kind of strategy. I'll probably talk about that myself on stream and maybe make a video on it as well, because I think it's a really good strategy that everyone can utilize. And like I said before, I'm pretty curious to see how that would work out on a league start scenario. I think that could be a ridiculous amount of currency because of how many people want to do those quickly to get to completion or farming them for the drops to make money out of the drops, right? So I think that could be a really fun approach to do it. But yeah, I mean,
also,
we can.
The boss drops are more expensive.
Oh,
also, the boss drops of Searing Exarch are more expensive, right?
Yeah, for sure. Last I checked, saw someone in chat mention as well, the Forbidden Jewels are about twice as expensive from Searing.
Yep.
Because, twice as many people running Eater Worlds, so it's kind of obvious, right? Even if it's the same actual modifier. But yeah, unless you have anything else you want to share or want to bring up or discuss when it comes to the Atlas tree, we can move on to talking about crafting, I guess.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So I guess crafting, obviously we're sitting here talking about you were talking about mirroring your entire build because of the synthesizer rings, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have my mirror items as well, and then again, that kind of content is very limited to a very select few people, and there's only so many people that can afford it, and even fewer of them would spend that money on things like this, and even fewer than that would be crafting it. So how about we talk a little bit about profit crafting when it comes to the lower end. This is something I've been focusing a lot on the last couple of months when it comes to crafting guides and teaching people that are newer to the game to get to the point where they can profit craft and how to find profit crafts items or profitable items to craft. The problem I've encountered is that if I say on stream in front of X amount of people saying, hey, X item is really profitable to craft right now, it would take 2 hours and then that market would be destroyed. What would your approach or suggestion be to people that have that question when they want to learn how to find profitable crafts?
I usually just watch what build people are playing and craft for those builds. For example, this league, a lot of people are playing omniscient builds, and they need attributes on suffixes and spell suppression, pretty much all of them. So what you're gonna do is probably just essence for attributes until suppression on an evasion or evasion and armor base. Evasion is gonna be more likely because um, the evasion has like double the weight on suppression than just an hybrid base. And or you can craft for like the weapons that I'm using. It's like usually just what I would look for is like stuff that is easy to craft, and you can just check on Craft of Exile, right? If it's easy to craft for the like meta builds.
For sure.
And there's different ways. Like usually, let's say you want to craft for Lightning Strike Raiders or Berserker. At the start of the league, there was a lot of people playing that. You can either try to do it with Rogue. You can spam essences on just a normal claw. You can buy a fractured base. There's like so many different ways that you can do it. You can spam fossils if you want. I don't know. Like it's kind of hard to find profitable. I don't know how to explain it like that well.
Yeah, it's really hard to do, right?
It's so hard. I actually don't know. Just go on PoE Ninja, look what people are playing, and craft for their build. And the rare items. You don't care about the uniques. Usually it's just craft weapons, rings, amulets, gloves, boots, helmets, chest. You can also do chest, I guess. Yeah, don't craft belts most of the times. And yeah, just don't craft belts because everyone's using an hunter or mace belt most of the times.
Yeah, as soon as it gets like big items, like the way I've tried to explain this has been like you said, PoE Ninja is great. Keeping an eye on Reddit is actually not that bad. It's something new that becomes popular starts to rise. Then
yeah,
you can...
look at streamers as well. What streamers are playing. So many people just change their build from whatever they're playing to like look at Rutu's build. He comes up with a really good build every league. Like strength, like this league, there's so many new builds like strength stackers, aura stackers. Kobe came out with a strength stacker, I think. There's like so many different things that you can craft. To be honest, like the meta's pretty varied. There's like so many. Usually attributes don't really sell that much on gear, and this league even stuff with attributes sells. Suppression, there's like everyone wants suppression on their gear. You can even influenced items are really good. Some builds, like for example, if they're not Dead Eyes and they don't need like Tailwind and stuff like that, because you can get it on boots, like double triple elevated boots. You can craft those. But yeah, I would also focus on the new currencies. The new Eldritch currency is really good for crafting low budget gear.
No, definitely. I usually tell people to check the Ninja streamers Reddit. Just make sure that they understand what is the meta build right now. You've been focusing a lot of Omniscience. I've been focusing on Mage Skeletons, which basically are the two main played builds right now, right? And when it comes to the builds, it's like you said, avoid uniques and then avoid certain build items that are going to be potentially unique items, such as you talked about Omniscience. The higher end will go for, go for Headhunter or Mace Blood. In Mage Skeletons, it's Mage Blood or Darkness of Throne. So belts are kind of a no-go for for those builds for Mage Skellies. On the other hand, gloves is something I made a video about recently as well, where I talk about the approach of crafting gloves where you can buy a base for like 5 chaos. They've gone up ever since. And it's the same thing there. There are different approaches to it. The high end wants to go energy shield. The lower budget, they stay on life base. So life base wants some armor for armor mitigation. And that kind of dictates what kind of a base you want to purchase. And then you can buy them with one of the implicits that you want in the Mage Skelly version. That would be minion damage. And then you just smack on essences on it. And because of the way essence with the new Atlas tree is just pissing out so many for everybody, they cost like nothing. The highest tier Essence of Fear costs 2 chaos each, 3 if you buy them in massive bulks. And with massive bulks, I'm talking 50 to 100 per trade. That's 3 chaos each. Otherwise, they're 2 C each. It's nothing. And you can spend maybe less than an Exalted, and you end up with a pair of gloves that is actually selling for 5 up to 10x. And then you can obviously go for the other approach of upgrading it with Orbital Conflict. So that's one way of doing it.
I got some tricks if you wanna go for profit crafting. Okay, basically, this might be out fixed. Okay, basically, if you get, for example, a chest or a pair of gloves with 2 implicits, right, and you split it with a beast, it's usually it's gonna give you 1 implicit on each item, and the item is gonna get a split tag. But if you use a fracture fossil and you fracture an item, it's gonna double the item, give you 2 items with a split tag, and they both are gonna have both the implicits. So you can literally just dupe the item one time.
Yeah, exactly. So you get 2 bases instead because both implicits.
Yeah, let's say you get like some crazy, like some implicit with like 2 pierce and 2 additional strikes gloves for lightning strike, for example. You can just split it with a fracture fossil, and it's gonna give you 2 gloves, and they don't get a mirror tag anymore. They're not mirror, so you can actually like craft on them actively. You can actually craft on them, and yeah, you're just basically just gonna get 2 of them. And also another thing that the new currency is really strong with is fractured items. There's a lot of fractured item dropping from the League Mechanic, Expedition, and other League Mechanics. Maybe Heist, I think, drops some. But yeah, there's a lot of fractured items that drop. And even if they're not perfect, like let's say, I don't know, like 40 decks or whatever, or like something usable, if you want some cheap gear, just look for a good fracture prefix or suffix, and then essence spam until like 1 or 2 good mods. You can try to Eisling or like craft mods and continue crafting it with the Eldritch currency. I think everyone knows how the new currency works.
If not, there's plenty of guides out there.
Yeah. If you don't know, you can basically target the prefixes and the suffixes. So it's extremely easy to get like 6 mod, almost perfect items. And the implicits, how you roll them is either you start on the base not crafted, and then you imprint, but you can't do this on fractured items, right? Because you can't imprint fractured items.
I learned that the hard way.
and if you go this way, you can basically get very easily your implicits. You can get them very, very easily because you can you can basically increase the tiers with the orb and then imprint whenever you get to a good point, and then you just save the state, and if you fail and you go down, you can always imprint it back and go until you are at the maximum tier, which is perfect, and then you can spam for the other influence to greater or greater, I don't remember the name, but yeah, and that way you get implicits really easily. But if you want to get the actual stats on the item really easily, you can just skip the implicit until the end. Like you do them at the end, and you only use the icors and the embers and icors to just focus the prefixes or suffixes. And that way, the crafting the implicits is gonna be way harder though, and you're gonna spend way more. But you can get like perfect items that way.
Yeah, I actually did that with I actually did a mistake and I lost 140 extra something. I crafted the lightning strike gloves with the 2 pierce and 2 additional target implicits with the Alva mod. So I did that on 2 different pairs, and I tried both strategies out just to see how it felt with the current market. Because Craft of Exile can only tell you the average craft costs so much, but when you have to start buying things that you will empty an entire market of the exceptional ichors or embers, then whatever Craft of Exile says is not always accurate. So I had to try it. What I did, for those of you who don't know how to achieve that, it is basically a perfect implicit of one mod, and then you have the rank 4 or the exception of the other, and then use an Orb of Conflict that will lower the tier of the perfect but up the other one. Yeah. So both becomes the rank 5 or whatever, the second highest. And
yeah, it's trying to do 5/5. Yep.
Yeah, and that can be very expensive. So the first pair I did, I did that after I had finished crafting it because I wanted to craft the item with the Alva mod. So I played around with the implicits, and then I used the Eldritch currency to fix that shit and keep the Alva mod there until my suffixes were done. And then I worked on the prefixes, and when they were done, and then I applied the implicits, which took me over 100x to finish because it was so ridiculous. And then on the second pair, I bought a pair of Alva gloves. Or actually, I bought 6 of them and purchased them down until I finally got a pair with Alva mod on a blue item. And I did the imprint strategy. But the problem when you had the imprint on a strategy 5/5 is that suddenly none of them is dominant. And when none of them is dominant, you're going to finish the item, which has 1 modifier. That's like imprint, aug, regal, pray it's good, and then, beastcraft a little bit.
Yeah.
And that gets expensive. But that was actually cheaper in the long run. The problem was I did this on armor base, so there was no spell suppression, so I lost money either way. But
oh no.
that happened, but at least I got a feeling for the crafting process for it. But obviously, this is again talking about these like super expensive crafts, and it kind of goes to show the different ways you can do this. But I would say that if you are a player that starts to learn how to craft, the best way to approach that knowledge and understanding how you can approach these things is to basically watch a ton of different videos and a ton of different guides and learn different crafts. Like, hey, this is how you craft the elusive tailwind boots, and this is how you craft the +2 ones for minions, or this is how you craft that to that to that. And the more of these things you learn, the more crafting methods those items are using that you then can apply to another item that there might not be a video for. And understanding how the process works, understanding what the orbs are doing, and then you can figure those things out yourself. That's why crafting is so complex in the game. And also, obviously, as soon as a video comes out for a craft, ton of other people doing it, and the profit of those usually goes down with it, right?
Yeah. The more crafting you do, the easier it becomes, because most of the things that you learn get reapplied in other crafts. It's like the mechanics of crafting are like that, like they get repeated in a lot of different crafts. So just try crafting the gear that you need for your build, and eventually you learn. That's how I learned crafting. I was just crafting gear for myself every league. I wasn't really profit crafting or anything. I was just crafting gear for myself, or for people that I played with, and yeah, I just typed like step by step how I was doing it, so I wouldn't forget. And yeah, that's for example, I started the spreadsheet because Grimro was like, "How do you craft my boots?" And I'm like, "I just did this," and he's like, "Wait, I don't understand. Just type it down." And I just started doing like the spreadsheet because people in his chat wanted to like keep up and like craft the same gear as Grim when I was playing with him. So yeah, basically just start crafting and then keep trying to learn new techniques, and then eventually you just know how to craft an item just by looking at it.
Yeah, it's just a process of learning. I mean, that's always been the thing with Path of Exile. It's just a huge, very steep learning curve. But the more knowledge you have, and they introduce a new thing, the Eldritch currency. Once you understand the previous crafting methods, then when they introduce something new, it's instead of sitting there like a question mark, being super confused, like what the fuck is happening. Instead, you're gonna be like, whoa, this is pretty cool. What can I do with this? Now I have all the information in the past. What can I do with this? And then just apply that and apply that and apply that, right? I mean, we talked about gaming hours before. I played this game for quite a lot of, like you have as well. And I mean, even with that many hours, we still learn new things. I remember a couple leagues back, me and the moderator I play with, Tivakakaka, we talked about the way these meta block crafts work and how they actually interact. And what they're doing is essentially they are basically just limiting whatever orb you're smacking on the item, is limiting the effect of that. So for example, if you have a cannot roll caster craft, they use an annulment orb. The annulment orb won't touch your I cannot roll caster mods, and I still to this date haven't used that information in any craft. But I know for a fact that there are so many different crafts I could have used that on, and I just completely forgot it because I haven't used it in many cases at all. But having that information is rather good. Sorry,
we use that on the Canol attack one. This league is specifically used in quivers when you want to craft perfect 2-arrow quivers. Basically, you alt spam until you get 1 arrow, right? And then you do suffix cannot be changed imprint. Now you do reforged crit until you get crit multi, right? With 1 suffix open. Then you do canol attack mods. You do multi-mod mod. Suffix cannot be changed, reforged fizz until you get T1 fizz on the prefix. Now you have arrow, crit multi, fizz, and then you craft canol attack mods, and then you do double slam. The canol attack mods now will block every possible attack mod, so you can only slam on the prefixes damage percent and life. And now you have damage percent life prefix, and every other mod is attack. So what you can do is annul it again until you get T1 T1. So you get a 5 T1 quiver really easily. And you can get like with arrow synth implicit, so you get 2 arrows and 5 T1. And
I mean,
you can
those doesn't have that low weight either, so that's just brute forcing it. I like that.
You just brute force it. You just annul. You can roll attack mod, annul life, annul damage and then you slam it back again over and over and over until you get T1 T1. Yeah. And it's not even that hard. It's somewhat expensive because it costs exalts every time. But you can use Leo slams. You can use Harvest slams. There's like Harvest, the cheaper slime, non-influenced, like 50, 60 chaos, I think, and
Yeah,
the Leo slams.
I
So you
actually even
save some
have
money
one.
there.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and you can safely annul all the mods that you don't want, pretty much,
Yeah.
and everything else is forced.
No, I can definitely see that being something you can utilize for that specific crafts. Most of the items that I craft for are spellcaster builds or minion related builds. So I haven't had a situation where that has been a part of the method. It's in some cases which I haven't used yet. I could have saved an item with that, which I should have remembered. But you talk about this. You mentioned that it could be expensive because it costs exaltas, and that's a really big factor, I think, when it comes to learning how to craft. A lot of people are staying away from crafting because it's expensive. They can't afford it. They don't want to learn from their mistakes. Like, I mean, I lost so much on those two gloves because of stupidity with the bases, of course. But a lot of people, they don't want to risk their currency, and that's why Craft of Exile's emulator is amazing. If they want to learn how to craft, it's obviously going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort and patience, and deciding that, hey, I want to learn this. You can actually go to craftofexile.com, and in there's an emulator where you can basically craft the item, learn how to use that method or that tool, and you can practice crafting items, and you'll see how the game would interact with it without using your actual currency. It would just be to simulate it on a website instead. So that's a really effective way to learn these crafts that we were talking about. The quiver that you're talking about, for example, is a great example of showing that. And that can also give you quite of a hint or an idea of how much that would cost. So I think that's a really good tip as well to bring to light.
Also, if people want to learn crafting, maybe instead of starting with metacraft, start with something easier like fossil spamming, or like just take all the harvest nodes in your tree and just go harvest and just reforge on items. And then you see what sells. You just keep it in public tab. So whenever you find something good, you just get PM for it. And they're like, oh, this sells. Now you know that these mods sell with that item, and you didn't really pay much because you just found the harvest in your map, right? While playing. Or also, like, you can do fossils, essences. They're pretty cheap this league because they're so easily obtainable. The league mechanic drops so many fossils. There's like some combos that drop a lot of fossils. If you drop Entangler plus Trent, you can drop so many fossils. It's not like the best combo, but like if you have extra Trents, you can do it.
Yeah.
And like you drop so many fossils, so they're really cheap. You can buy bulk of fossil for like less than 1 chaos each. So just throw fossils with the tags that you need on your item and see if stuff sells. And whenever something sells, you learn that sells and craft more of it. And if it stops selling, change it up and keep going. And the more you craft, the better you become at it, and you will make more money.
And also, a thing to mention is when it comes to mapping for currency, a lot of people say that you should treat your hideout as lava. Basically, the less time you spend in your hideout, the better, because your time is effectively spent killing things. That also goes for crafting. The more accustomed and more comfortable you feel with crafting, the faster you can look at the item after you rolled it and determine this is a reroll, or this I can do something with, or this one I'm going to sell, or this one on a bench and then sell. And once you get to that point, you can craft so many more items per hour, which will net you even more currency. And that comes again with the idea of getting more information and knowledge and experience. So the more you craft, like Yelazar is saying, like you just get more and more accustomed to it, and then you'll be much faster at it. And the faster you are, the better. And the way I play the game, I'm sure you do something similar as well, Yelazar. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. I tend to profit craft, and then I do 2 or 3 items per market, depending on how flooded they are. And then I do my mapping till one of those sells, and I will craft a new one if it sells. And I just rinse, repeat that, bouncing between farming and doing that. So I always have something that's profitable, profit crafts up for sale. Because I don't want to have a bunch of currency regularly in my stash. The less currency I have in my stash, the richer I am, is usually what I say. Because I want to invest that into something and keep a little bit of currency left over so I can invest that into mapping if I want to. But I want to make sure that I can always, at any given time, just go out of my map and I can start the profit craft, put it up for sale, and I'll be ready for it. So that's the way I treat the game when I'm making my currency, and at least specifically on league starts, is how I approach it. Are you doing something similar when you play, or?
Since I've started streaming, I haven't really been crafting that much. But yeah, whenever I craft stuff, like if I had to make a video or something like that, I usually just craft it and then just put it for sale and keep mapping. Yeah. But when I was playing with Tuna and Grim, and I wasn't streaming back in the days, I would just craft all day, like flood the market. I didn't care. One league, I found a trick to craft exploded chests really easy
Hmm?
early. I was like making a mirror every 14 hours or something.
Jesus.
Just selling exploded chests.
Uh,
I was selling like 75 exploded chests a day or something like that. After like 2 or 3 days, I completely broke the market and it wasn't profitable anymore. But I
uh,
usually just spam craft whatever is profitable and do that.
are you comfortable sharing some of your most crafted item this league, or that's?
This league, I I only crafted my own gear to be honest.
Hmm?
Uh, I crafted just double like the influence stuff with ichors and embers. I crafted a chest. I used it for like a week or something, and then I resold it for like I made it like 15x or something. I resold it for 38
Hmm?
yesterday, and I mirrored a new one now.
Nice.
But I haven't really been crafting, man. I've been just sniping the bases that I need because most of my gear is like, for example, my quiver is synthesized, so I have to buy the base and then I have to craft it. I crafted my quiver,
Hmm.
but I can't resell it. My boots, I need really specific boots, and they're like double elevated with the Tailwind Onslaught and a perfect T1 suffix on a fugitive base. So if I were to
Hmm.
craft those for the Chaos Res and the T1 attribute because I'm Omniscience,
Hmm.
if I were to craft those, I would have to Awaken Orb so many times until I get T1 attribute. So I'm like, I'll just snipe the base for like 50, 60, 70x. I bought
Hmm.
it for 50, and then I just crafted the prefixes. So I'm just sniping really specific things that I need, and I craft it.
Well, that's the
I finish
problem
it.
when it comes to min-maxing specific builds. Like they very rarely you have items available for purchase. I had the same problem when I decided to min-max my rings and my gloves on the Meixsell build. There was no choice. I had to spend a ton of currency crafting myself or snipe the base, and that's essentially what I did. I got my bases, and then I spent another, I don't know, 80 or 90x finishing them off, basically. And it can get expensive. And I'm not sure how it is for your omniscience build. You actually benefit across the board, defensively and offensively. But for Meixsell build, I mean, the min max in there is like I gain 200 energy shield for 100 exalted. Like, yeah, it's amazing. I talked about this on stream as well. One of my most crafted items this league was, again, like we talked about several times today in this podcast, has been to craft for the meta build, and most of your crafts was for omniscience. Most of my crafts have been for Meixsell. I crafted, I think I stopped counting after 150 helmets, and they were for the minion
Oh
helmets.
no!
They sold so fast that I crafted one, and before I had
Oh,
finished
you were selling them? Okay.
yeah, like before I had finished the second helmet, the first one had already sold. It was just absolutely disgusting. And they cost, early on in the league, they cost like 6 up to 10 exalted if you got unlucky. And they sold for 20, and it was just crazy. So I could finish a helmet in 20 minutes, and I made it at the very base minimum a 10 exalted profit. It was just crazy how fast it was. And
What are the
anytime,
suffixes? That
um,
like hypothermia,
just
more
typo.
elemental.
Just
Oh, just
hypothermia,
hypo.
just hypo +2 or +3 with minion damage. +2
Oh,
sells for a
okay.
lot
Yeah.
early on. Now you have to get +3 for a decent amount of currency, so it's harder now because of the flood. But then again, at any time I got a +3, those helmets sold for 30x. And at any given time you got a +2, +3 with socketed spells I've created, they were selling for like 50 plus or 70, 80. They're even worse now. They're like 100 plus X. Obviously, the average craft cost of something like that, where like the deft fossils would be around 100x. But the thing is, if you're spamming bound and frigid by crafting the regular one, something that we haven't talked about or mentioned today is when you have a profitable craft that is meta, and with meta builds, what happens with them is that they have such a huge demand that the supply in the early stage of the league has a hard time keeping up with the demand, which is why the price is so good,
Yeah.
and the margin between the worst sellable outcome and the average craft cost is so big. That's a very good profit craft. That when you're crafting something like, because of the large margin differences between the worst sellable outcome and the average craft cost is so big that you will always profit. The more of those you craft, you're just going to profit on every single item. You eventually will hit those bigger ones. I ended up using one of the bigger ones I hit with Socket to Spells crit. And when I made the mirror helmet later, I sold that helmet for 55 exalted something. But if you're doing this for profit, you will eventually hit the big ones. It's like back in Ritual League. I made ones. I crafted over 400 plus 2 ones. They all sold, and they all made me at least 25, 30x profit each. It was just absolutely disgusting. And it's all about just pushing that. But then again, not everybody likes crafting. Not everybody has the knowledge. And that's where farming maps for generic baseline guarantee profit is a good starter, if you will. But yeah, no, I think that should be mentioned as well when it comes to meta builds, because of the way the supply and demand works. But even now, like a month later, there are still plenty of profit crafts available. It's just that normally the profit crafts tends to go to the little bit more high budget versions rather than the super cheap, because more people are crafting them, right? I'm sure you experience the same thing with omniscience, right?
Yeah, and also people are like upgrading their gear, so their old gear goes back in the pool for sale, So like really like low to mid tier gear becomes really cheap because the market becomes flooded, and really high end gear becomes really expensive.
And that works in favor for casual players who only plays like an hour there, an hour there.
Yeah, you can buy your gear cheaper for sure.
Yeah, they get their medium budget version of their build up because they can suddenly afford it, and they can make their currency by, like you said, talking about easy farming strategies like the White Master bosses, sell the Conquer maps and all those things. Do the generic mapping that you can't lose money on, just get a little bit of money for your game time. And because of the like you said, I'll start with the people upgrading the builds, the helmets or the items or whatever goes back into the pool and becomes cheaper because the market's now oversupplying the demand. And then the people that are casual players have an affordable market to work with all of a sudden. So I think it's, the ecosystem of the way crafting works in PoE is actually really healthy. Because when the casual players gets the currency to buy these things, the market is suddenly in a situation where it's actually catering to those people, right? And the profit crafts goes up to the next level where you have to have more money to spend for bigger crafts. Another thing actually with profit crafts when it comes to Meixsell I wanted to talk about was actually the perfect cluster jewels, the 12 passive mini
I've been
damage.
crafting those
last week. I bet.
I crafted 1 or 2 this league as well.
I hate them. I never craft them actually. I actually have one of the guys in the small team I'm playing with. I always have one of those guys craft them for me because I hate them. It's just so many alterations and imprint regals, and then you have to go to TFT to buy an orc crit at the end. But that's another one of those things.
Wait. Which ones are you talking about?
I was
talking the ones for like Arakali with I was crafting with like 10 life or 10 yes with effect, 3 speed, and like Chaos Res or attributes last. 12 passives. And I was crafting those with I was spamming Shuddering, Dance, Pristine, because the Dance and Pristine block life and yes on the prefixes, so the effect is really likely to hit. And the Shuddering increases the chance of the speed suffix, right? So you just want to speed an effect on a 6 passive level 84 and any tier. And then what you do, you go in bestiary, you try to suffix to prefix the bad mod and prefix to suffix, because on average it takes like 4 tries with the fossils, right? To get just effect and speed. And then prefix to suffix to prefix spam, it's like a 50-50 gamble to remove the bad mod or the good mod that you have. And then it adds another mod on top or on the bottom, which is really likely to hit life or yes or attributes or chaos res.
Yeah.
Which are like the mods that you want on those builds, on Arakali, for example. And basically once you hit like at least 3 good mods, even if you don't have the 4th mod, it's fine. You just go on TFT, buy more likely for like 15 chaos, 20 chaos. And as long as you have like life or yes and effect, any effect 25 or 35, and speed and 1, 2, or 3, you just more likely. And even if you don't have a 4th mod, when you do Reforge more likely, it acts as a chaos orb.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it gives you more likely of the mod that you have. So you're basically exalting your jewel with a more likely, because if you spam more likely, you're gonna get like a 4th mod. And you start with 3 good ones, and most of the times you keep the 3 good ones, right? Because more likely increases by a lot the chance. So you just keep spamming more likely over and over, and you can get like 4. I was getting like perfect clusters last league on my Arakali Spider. I played it last league. It's one of the best builds I play. Like, it's so nice, Arakali Spider.
It's actually going to be my next build.
I got to 1,000 depth in Delve. Oh, okay. Yeah, I got to 1,000 depth in Delve. It destroys Wave 30 Simulacrum. And if you're just running maps fast, the playstyle with Arakali Spiders and Occultists with the gloves that give you the kill kind of feel like Auto Bomber. It kind of feels like an Auto Bomber.
When minion kills, Profit and Bloom procs as well.
Yeah, but you just you take the gloves so that you never have to resummon the spiders, right? You just run the whole map.
Yeah, of course.
So you just spawn you summon, you desecrate one time, use the flash to spawn the worms, you kill them, and then you just run the whole map. And if it takes like 1 second or two to like start the map, and then you just run at full speed with Mage's Blood, and your minions. I was getting rings with like minion speed and stuff like that with the essence. Your minions get so much speed with the squire as well that it feels like if the map is all can go like without beyond and stuff like that, it clears the map so fast. I was farming Alvas like that last league.
No, it's a really cool
And
build
it's
for
really,
sure.
really good.
It's a really cool build. It's you just gotta find
It
like
can do
these.
really hard content as well, yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's just all about getting to the like once you get accustomed to the playstyle, then it gets really, really juicy. But if you don't like the playstyle, it can feel very clunky. But you have to get used to it and play it accordingly. Then it gets really good. But the jewels I was talking about is the Meixsell jewels, which is 35 effect with life or energy shield, and then it's the attack speed, cast speed, and the last modifier is vicious bite, which you can guarantee through an orc crit. And the process
so it's
for
almost
those,
the same craft.
it's almost, yeah. So there's a couple of
You just
different
need to
ways.
crit at the end, yeah.
Yeah, so basically the best way to do it is basically that you craft it with alterations and augments, and then you imprint regal it, and if you get a suffix, you do the suffix into prefix, and if that fails, you do the 50-50 back to suffix, 50-50 back. If at any time it breaks, back to imprint it again, regal. Rinse, repeat till you get a tier 2 or tier 1 energy shield or life, aug crit for 10x, and those jewels sells for like 40 plus. It's so much currency. The problem for me is that there's so many alterations early on, and then the imprint. I just can't be arsed to. I hate crafting it, but I think there's still profitable crafts right now, actually. I know that one of the guys I played with crafted tons of them, made a couple of mirrors of currency just from those jewels alone. It's just absolutely disgusting because a lot of people don't craft things that first off requires a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, but mostly when there's a huge amount of time spent crafting them, because you can sit for like half an hour spamming alterations and augments till you hit it. You can, depending on how fast you are. You can also sit for like 2 hours spamming imprints if you're really unlucky, and you know some people don't want to do that. I hate it. I think it's annoying. So a lot of people like myself would rather buy it or have someone else craft it for me. So I mean those things are really good.
That's why I don't go for the alteration and imprint strategy, even though it's more deterministic and you get it for sure. I prefer like doing the fossil plus more likely because it's fast and it's pretty cheap. Like every try is pretty cheap. Instead of like imprints are somewhat expensive. But yeah, your way is like more deterministic and definitely you get it for sure eventually if you keep trying. And more likely is like more RNG and low cost, entry cost.
Oh, for sure. The question really is, that's one of the crafts that we can't verify on Crafted XL what the average craft cost is. In the same way, because it's you have to go through the not the emulator but the simulator to get an average craft cost, and I actually haven't even bothered doing that myself. But no, there's definitely different ways of doing it, and I think that they all pan out. I just feel like if you're doing something that requires a 10 exalted investment for an all crit at the end, you don't want to do that on a 25 effect. You have to make it perfect. I don't like the tier 2 life or energy shield. I want that to be tier 1, for example. But they're sellable.
And also the initial cost of the cluster itself, which is 84 12 passives, which is probably like at the start of the league it was around 10x, I think. I don't know how much it is now, but
they went from 10 down to 6.5 was the cheapest I saw before. I said, fuck this, I'm not gonna touch it. I don't like having too high investments in crafts. I like profit crafting, but there are some profit crafts that I know can be very good that I tend to stay away from because I just don't like the initial investment to it. And especially with the higher budget items, even more specifically when it comes to early in the league, is that you might craft something that is profitable, but if it's very expensive outcome that you land on, first couple of days, no one's going to buy it. Very few people have that currency unless it's, a weapon for omniscience, for example, because they want that because that's a big portion of their damage. Helmet for minions is another thing, but, like a super big wand. I crafted the mirror wand. With a guy called Freck, we spent like 800x crafting it, and we've serviced it twice. So we've lost 700 exaltus on it. So, I mean, it happens, right? But I'm sure that more people will mirror that type of item in a couple weeks from now, because then people have the rest of the gear is already great or perfected that wants this, that can't afford it and or haven't desired for it. Then they will look into that little bit extra upgrade, right? So it's like, and the same goes for non-mirror items when it comes to high-budget pieces. They will prioritize the items that are expensive that does the biggest difference to their character. And that's why we don't see people mirroring rings, for example, or gloves and stuff like that till much later in the league, unless, of course, we're talking about, like you were referring to your build with the double synthesized, maximum charge rings. They're always crazy. Yeah.
And also the fees are crazy.
Yeah, what are they charging
140x for a ring.
What?
It's like, what?
Dude,
the bow was 100x and the rings are 140 each.
Oh my god, dude! I
The
should
fees
snipe that
are
shit.
astronomical. They're actually crazy.
How are you, like, since you're mirroring a lot of items? I know I spoke to Path Math about that the other day as well. The mirror market this league compared to previous league seems crazy. Like, I might help. Have you seen the helmet that I have?
Which helmet? Sorry, you
The minion helmet. Sorry. If you've seen the minion helmets.
Yours? Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, so that one has 16 min damage, whereas my competitor, I lost the race. Over the last 2 years, I've lost the race 3 times. This league was one of them. To finish it first, and they made a better one. And they're charging, they did charge 100x. Now they're charging 120 because sometimes, or mostly, people increase the cost of the mirror fee as the league goes on because more people have more currency. I'm gonna stay on my 50x. So realistically, the DPS difference is so small, so mine should be better. But 20 million damage looks better. Still a lot of currency.
Yeah.
But either way, the fees for these things are just so crazy compared to previous leagues. Like for all items that I've seen, like way worse than before. Is that something you've noticed?
Yeah, the fees are so expensive. And I also know like some people that snipe the bases, right?
Yeah.
And then resell them to them and stuff like that. The people that are crafting, and they're sniping the bases for not even that expensive, and like they're making fees that are insane. I don't know. I think the fees are so high this league.
Yeah. What do you think do you know what the synthesis ring that you're talking about? Do you know what they sold for, the bases? Because crafting them is not that much money. It's not that hard either.
I think it was around 200x to snipe the base. I think that's what I heard.
Just over half a mirror then.
200x.
That's insane.
But it was early, I think. I'm not sure.
Holy shit. I mean, that if you have that much money and you buy a base like that, you spend, well, I would assume about the same amount of currency crafting it. For
I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what I heard. I have the owner of the mirror in my chat sometimes. I'll ask him again. I forgot.
Yeah, do so. I'd like to hear that. Because, I mean, if say that he spent another 200 crafting it, because crafting the rings, it's annoying, but it's not really that hard. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and then getting it because it's that crazy. I mean, that's not many services before that you made your money back and then some. It's kind of brutal, actually. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, but I spoke to Path and he said that the mirror services in the current league is crazy compared to previous leagues. And I can't for the life of me figure out why the mirror service fees are so much higher this league compared to before. And the only explanation I have is that because of the way the Atlas is set, like we talked a lot about that earlier today, the excessive the easier access to high-end grind is easier, so more people are doing it.
Yeah.
And the easier access to start doing the low-end currency farm is easier, so a lot more people are doing that, which I'm guessing means that most people have more currency than they normally do, and that's why it's higher.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Also, I thought mirror would go up faster. They're kind of stuck at around 350 now, right?
Yeah.
I saw them spiking, and now they're like kind of stable.
That was also weird. We see the spike normally 1.5, a little bit more than 1.5 months in, but we had this spike twice as fast than we've seen in previous leagues as well. And I'm not sure if it is because of the access we have with the compass, with the sextants, to give people, guaranteed harvest and getting guaranteed league mechanics that is not part of the map device, which has obviously made an impact in the past, but not so much anymore because we can buy the sextants, right? And that might be creating this scenario where people get the gambling going, which also goes hand in hand with people having access to more currency. They start gambling earlier. For House of Mirrors have obviously followed the mirror market and obviously be a full stack of mirror cards is usually costing a little bit more than the mirror itself because people use them for gambling, right? And that sparked early as well.
Yeah, also people usually all the cards so that they don't lose money to inflation. That's what I was doing at the start. I was just buying mirror shards up to like 15, 16, and then I was reselling them and finishing and reselling them at the same or more that I paid for, and then rebuying a full mirror after. Because if you don't farm the full mirror fast enough, it's likely that it's gonna go up like 20, 30x. So you're gonna lose some currency on the way. But if you invest in the mirror shards along the way and then you resell them before buying a full mirror, you usually just offset the inflation a little bit.
No, for sure. Something that is really good to mention there for the people that are watching, either on live now or on YouTube. Investing currency is always good, and if you don't know what to invest to, there's always certain items that will always go up. Like the first couple of hours or first day or two, Exalted Orbs is a popular flip. But for the big ones, it's like mirror shards are usually very cheap early on because nobody's going to use that until weeks later. And that's a really good investment because that will follow the mirror market. House of Mirrors are usually surprisingly cheap the first week, and then after a week, some people start gambling, and then more people start gambling with them. And as soon as that gambling starts kicking off really hard, I mean, 2 weeks ago, House of Mirrors were like 29 Exalteds each. Last I checked was 2 days ago. There were 42 Chaos, 42 Exalteds each, and it's just a massive, massive spike on it. So you don't need a mirror of worth or currency to invest into something that is going to be going up in price. You need a fraction of that, and you can make one investment and sell that a week later, and that investment is just major currency grow in your bank rather than having currency being affected by inflation. It's that something that's going to be inflated in the right way for you. So that's a good way to put it.
And I would only invest if your build is already at, or like your strategy is already at a good point where you can actually like farm currency effectively. But if you are struggling to farm currency, always invest in your gear or like your farming strategy first, I think. And then when you achieve a point where you're farming currency relatively fast, start investing into other assets. But usually at the start of the league, I usually just invest in my gear. Or like craft. You just start crafting and you just build a pool of items that you have for sale, for example.
Yeah.
Instead, let's say for example you have a lot of items for sale, right? Instead of like investing into currency, you just invest into more crafts, and you just even if they're stuck in your inventory for a long time, eventually they sell and they sell for a lot, right?
Yeah, like what I do normally on these. What I normally sorry, go ahead.
No. My bad. Go on.
Now, what I was doing in League Starts is that I make my character able to do tier 16 maps, and since I use a racing hardcore, it took me some time to get used to the whole idea that I don't want to gear my character to do it flawless. I just gear my character to be able to finish completion with the 6 portals I paid for. And then I stop gearing my character, and then everything else goes into investing into crafting materials that I'm going to use, because if I don't use them because of inflation, those items will be worth more, on top of me being able to sell them in a bulk to make a bulk trade, basically flipping it. So if I end up not using them, I've still made a profit, and if I use them, then I've paid less for them, and then I start profit crafting with that material. So that's how I approach it. And I think I had my 5-link flesh crafter on day 3, and I was able to kill the endgame bosses with that. And then the next step I upgraded my character was into a mirror helmet. And it was just that initial stage was I had gear to handle the content I needed it to handle for my money, and everything else was just straight up invested into making money, and I just pulled my currency was supposed to work for me instead. And I kept repeating that process, and then I used my currency to upgrade my character when I felt that I could, and would still have a wallet available for continuing that process. That's how I do it, at least. Path of Math's bow for mirror has been mirrored like 300 times, I think, something like that. I know that people in chat was mentioning that as well. I've been reading it a little bit, and I'm sure that definitely had an impact on the market when you have an item being mirrored that many times through that short time span. Definitely. It's also quite interesting. Even we had the discussion with the 5th version being better than the LE version, and even so the difference would obviously be rather small, but even if there is a difference, it doesn't really matter. The bow the Path made is, no matter how you look at it, will still be the highest EDPS bow, right? Yeah, and we haven't seen. It's very rare these days, at least, that we see crafts in leagues that is competing with items from standard league because of legacy items, right? And we saw a surge of this when Maven orbs were introduced. But outside of that, it's rather uncommon for us to see these things. So when it happens, especially when it is for a popular build, those items will be mirrored like an obnoxious amount of times, and that definitely has an impact on the market.
Yeah. Also, I think there's been a better bow crafted
Really?
than Path of Mass, but it has a fee in League.
Oh,
And also in Standard, there's like triple implicit ones, I think.
Jesus.
That there's like crazy triple implicit ones. So I think there's definitely better in Standard. They actually, in Standard, there was a old perfect elemental bow, but there was a bug that you couldn't divine them to the new tiers, to the new rolls.
Huh.
And they actually scoured the bow completely and recrafted it. And then after
They
like
did
2
what?
weeks, they had to scour it because there were new tier of elemental damage.
Oh, God.
They actually scoured and recrafted it. I heard.
Holy shit.
I think Dapano told me.
That's insane. Then again,
Yeah,
Standard
crazy.
League has, a mirror is what, 800 extra something. So I mean, the market, it's
It doesn't have a
bit
fee.
difference.
It doesn't have the new one doesn't have a fee either. Cloudy has it.
And that's better than the Path one?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure. So the story was that Zaboob, which is like one of the best Tombran players, basically misclicked on the new bow that was gonna be better than one the Path of Mass had, and he misclicked, and instead of divining it, he reforged, I think. And then he spent like 1 week or 2 weeks trying to recraft it, and eventually he actually hit it. He actually recrafted it and gave it back to the owner.
Jesus
He was trying to
Christ.
divine it to perfect, and he bricked it.
That's nasty.
But yeah, he's out of jail now. He can. He actually crafted it.
I've done that before. It was when they introduced new tiers of spell damage to daggers. This must have been 7 years ago, 6 years ago, or something. I crafted the highest spell damage dagger in the game, and I was looking at the spell damage, and I slammed it. This was back in the days with Eternal Orbs crafting.
Okay.
And I slammed it, and I just saw the mana roll pop out, and I'm like, fuck this, scoured it and used the Eternal Orb. And I had to check the VOD because chat went crazy. It was a hybrid with the mana. It was the mod I was looking for, and I had hit it. It was the best for like 5 seconds. Have you done any of those like big crafting mistakes? Because that's always fun to hear. I've scoured a couple of items in the past couple of years, but
I did like when I first started doing like beast splits, like back when you could just split the item over and over on a blue base, right?
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes crafted on like my original base because I usually would do like 2 or 3 copies and then craft on those. I forgot to split it and like make a copy, and then I crafted an actual bow and I sold it, and then I go back in my tab wherever the original base is and it's gone, and then I go to my friend, I'm like, yo, do you still have a base, and can you give me a copy? Because like back in the days you would share your bases with other crafters, right? Because you can just imprint split them and just make an exact copy of the blue base to mod and then craft into like 4, 5, 6 mods. But yeah, one time I break my original base and to ask a friend of mine to give me one back. But other than that, I don't think so. I usually don't do too many mistakes.
Yeah.
I don't craft them much on stream, but yeah, I usually don't do that many mistakes because I usually craft stuff that I already know how to craft. And and it's not crazy expensive either. Even if I break it, I'm not gonna go for. I'm usually don't craft mirror tier stuff. I rather just mirror it. I do like 100x budget items. I don't go for like multiple mirrors items. Like mirror perfect item bases with like synthesized stuff.
I love crafting the mirror items. I always have a lot of fun with that. The dopamine kick when you hit it, it's hard to beat. That's why I love it. But now I have scoured. I crafted, like, one of my goals I have when I play the game is, like I mentioned before, the race. I want to craft the meta helmet for whatever minion build is meta at the time. And I always, except for 3 times in the past few years, is when I've lost that race. Such as this league, I lost it by 5.5 hours, I think. I finished mine after, and it turned out to be worse. So, but that helmet, I scoured one league. I lost that league as well.
I think I saw that clip.
Yeah, I forgot to click the craft button on the bench craft for the meta block, and then
Yeah,
I clicked the scour. So I mean, but you know, when you craft a lot of items, mistakes happen. It's that's for the times we have to, you know, take a step back and realize that it's just a game, right? But it's a lot of fucking work. It's a lot of money.
The only time I bricked a really, really expensive item is when we were doing mirror services on Ultimatum, and I crashed in the instance.
No.
It was me, Crouching Tuna, and Phil Su. We are mirroring Rutu's staff. It's also referred as the staff incident. Basically, I crashed. I had a bad connection. I wasn't streaming at the time. I had a bad connection, bad PC, and I didn't have fiber. And basically, we made our build so that we couldn't possibly die ever from ultimatums. We could tank Maven Bomb. We could tank everything in the game because the old Aura bots and stuff, they were kind of crazy. And in one map, I just crashed. We did hundreds and hundreds of mirror services on Ultimatum. We are like printing currency, making like 15x fee for other people giving us their mirror items, and we're just mirroring their items. And then the one time that we weren't doing a service for someone, but we were actually mirroring the stuff for Tuna, I actually crashed and we bricked his stuff. But then we just spent around 800x and we just recrafted it in like 2 hours. So we just gave him the stuff back. We just remade it instantly.
Yeah, because then you had the fuel to do it, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
we had to buy.
That's the perk of it, right? Kind of reminds me of when when people were new to Harvest crafts. I was crafting one of the mirror wands, and I was doing remove adcaster, which worked back then, or existed back then even. I was going for +2 on a double damage wand for minions, and the guy hits it, and we had spent like a couple of 100x on it. He hits it, and then he hits the craft again and rolls it away.
Oh no!
And it took us 1,100. Yep. 1,179 remove adcaster to get it back. Took me a few days. Oh man, I felt bad for him though. I mean, I was just laughing about it. You know, shit happens. That's the times, like I said before, we have to realize that it's a game, even if it's a lot of currency and it's a lot of work and time put into it. It's still a game. There's nothing to cry about. And now in hindsight, I can laugh about it, but I was pretty fucking upset. Oh man. But no, I mean, it feels pretty good in general. There's a lot of things to take into consideration when it comes to crafting, when it comes to making currency, and you have your approaches, I have mine, and we have so many content creators out there that are providing content that teaches people how to do these things. And you as a viewer or watching this on stream or on the YouTube later, you have to make up your own decision if it's something that you'll have fun utilizing this type of knowledge, or if it's something that you find interesting or that you want to spend the time, because learning how to do specifically crafting requires so much work and time to learn. Whereas farming, you can look at a guide and say, hey, this is easy, you can do this, can go very easy. You can take it to the next step, like Elisar was talking about, make an investment with 100 chaos per map, but you're going to make currency back, and just learn these things and see which part you think would be more fun, and approach it that way. Do you have any other tips that you can provide for newer players, perhaps?
If you want to get into crafting, just start with the new influence items that are really easy to craft. The new Eldritch, Searing, Exarch, and Eater of Worlds. Compared to normal items, they're extremely cheap and easy to craft, and the amount of money that you spend making them compared to the amount of power that you get back is way higher than other crafts. So for as a starting base, they're like really perfect items. I think, like, just to start with, you can make your build with like a few X and just be able to do all content in the game. You get a lot of defensive stats, and on the implicits you can get offensive stats. Compared to every other type of crafting method, like influence, walk orbing, that is very RNG. The new crafting method is very deterministic. You get really strong items, and they're definitely good.
For sure. And again, utilizing information where you get the intel on these things, like the weight, and learning what weight means is also rather crucial, especially when it comes to hitting specific modifiers. For example, I've been showing this a lot with the minion damage gloves. The minion damage roll itself is harder to hit than the mark increase effect implicit, for example. So it's better to start with a implicit with mini damage and rolling the mark effect yourself. Because if you start with a clean item, like you mentioned as well before, LSR, with a clean item without the implicit and hitting both implicit will cost you a lot of currency, and it's a lot of RNG involved because there's quite a few hits to achieve. But buying base items or sniping them, as we call, where one of those modifiers is already covered for, is in more cases than not the better approach to it. But that kind of feels like we covered both Atlas crafting and farming. Is there anything else you feel like you want to bring up, or do you feel satisfied?
No, it's pretty good.
All
if
right.
you have anything else.
No, I think we covered everything and then some.
Okay.
Like I said before, these podcasts, we don't really have any topics. I mean, since you're big in the meta farming of farming currency, well, with effective running, with Grimro and Tuna, as well as crafting, I think this was really good that we could touch upon those specific topics and talk about the Atlas tree. For the future, could you just maybe perhaps run down what we can expect to see on your channel and where we can find you?
Sorry, I didn't hear you cut off on
I cut off, sorry. I was saying maybe you could give us a rundown of what we can expect from your stream or your YouTube and where we can find you, and send people over to your channel.
Yeah. On YouTube, it's LSR, and on Twitch, it's LSR93. And on my YouTube, I'm probably gonna try to make more crafting videos. I haven't posted a lot because I was mostly streaming. I need to get back into doing YouTube videos. And for my Twitch channel, I'll mostly play PoE still. I'll try to casually play Lost Ark, maybe a little bit, but mostly still play PoE. I'm still gonna farm for a few days, and then I'm gonna craft pretty much my whole gear, the rest of the gear that I'm missing. And then I'm gonna probably go with my bow build in other content, like I'll try Wave 30 Simus, or maybe, I don't know, Delve or something like that. Because one problem that I have with this league, there's not a lot of art content. You're kind of capped on the amount of how hard the content is, kind of. So maybe I'll try some Delve or Wave 3 Simus. Other than that, I don't know. I even tried 100% Dali. It feels really easy on a bow build with a Fizz scaling. So my build feels like it can destroy everything up to now. So I don't know what to do other than just try Delve maybe.
Yeah, I just finished the challenges.
That, yeah.
All right. For me, well, you're probably watching this on the stream or on YouTube. You can find me here. I'll be focusing on Archaeus Fang will be my next build, but right now I'm focusing on super low budget initial starting farming strategies that you can alchemy go, or extremely minimal investments to make sure that you can make a little bit of currency no matter what you do. And the next steps would be to, like we talked about several times now, do the more heavy investment farming strategies. So that's what I'll be focusing on right now. Either way, boys, thanks so much to LSR for joining in on this podcast, and thank you everybody for watching. Hope you liked it. Make sure you hit the like button and comment down below what you feel about these podcasts, and check out the LSR on his YouTube and Twitch channel. They will be linked in the descriptions below. And till next time, stay safe.